Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 688. Today we're going to talk about Fast Sloths. This is a new game coming out from Stronghold Games and designed by Friedman Freeze. Plays 2 to 5 players. And you can kind of see a little tongue-in-cheek bit. Maybe you can read that underneath the title. It says, "Pick me up and deliver me." What's happening in this game is players are taking the role of a sloth, a very slow-moving creature usually. But you're playing cards of other animals in the jungle, in the forest here, to pick you up and move you around to go get your food. And so the first player to collect 8 of their leaves as their food is going to be the winner. So it's very much a racing game, but it also has some really funky deck building mechanics that are very different and some other little tricks and intricacies. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the game actually plays, and I'll come back and give you my thoughts on it. Okay, so now I've set up the sort of basic board. You can see these boards here are split in half and they're actually double-sided. And then the position of these different animal tokens here, you can see I have the ant there. These are in a fixed position if you just play the basic kind of first game setup. Now typically what you will do, especially if you have some of the expansion boards, which I have here, you can get another set of double-sided half boards, is you can find a configuration like so, and this comes with the expansion, so you can put together any of these configurations will work. And then, regardless if you have the expansion or not, you're going to sort of draft the placement of all of these different animal tokens. Now you're always going to play with 6 different animals, and they each come with their own deck of cards. And the rules give you sort of an ideal suggestion to have a certain configuration of the animals. I'm not going to get into details, it's not too complicated, but you can just kind of randomly pick 6 different ones if you want, but it kind of gives you a little bit of guidelines and to keep the game balanced and a little bit more on the rails. But I think once you play it enough, you know, it'll be fun to kind of just mix and match whatever you want in terms of the animals. Now the animals are going to be very different here. So you can see here are the donkey cards, and then you've only got 3 donkey tokens. But the ant that I showed you, I believe there's 10 ant tokens there, and of course they have their own deck of ant cards, and these are all going to behave very differently. So like I said at the beginning, the object of the game is to go and collect your leaves. So scattered throughout the board are going to be these large trees here. They're kind of all by themselves in a hex. And on each of those you're going to put a different colored leaf for each of the players. Each of the players is going to have a little sloth token like so, and then you're going to move these around the board and try to collect 8 of your 9 leaves. There's actually 9 leaves that you can collect. So the first thing you're going to do is figure out the start player, and then in reverse player order, each player is going to choose a different starting leaf. So maybe blue goes there, and then they're going to take and put this leaf on their board, and then yellow is going to choose a different starting location with a different leaf and then put that on their board. So you can see here the blue player will put their first leaf there, and yellow will do likewise. And this is going to tell you kind of the rules of the game. It kind of acts as a player aid. So you can see to start your turn, you're going to draw some cards. At the start of the game, you're going to draw 3 cards. Then you're going to play one type of card. So you may play all elephants, all donkeys, all eagles, whatever. And then you're going to check your hand size, and then if you have more than 7 cards, in this case you have to discard down. Now as you add more leaves and collect more leaves, the rules are going to slightly change. So now that you have 2 leaves, you're going to draw 3, but then you have to discard 1 out of your hand and then play one type of card. Again, this is actually an optional step. Step 2, you don't have to play one type of card, you can just pass that. But then again, you're going to check your hand size. You can see the hand size is actually going to go down over the course of the game as you collect more leaves, and then you're going to draw less cards. I guess you're getting heavier and lazier as you get more food in you. Now one other thing to note here is your sloth can only be dropped off on these types of terrain. Now missing from the types of terrain are mountains and river spaces. You can be dropped on river spaces with a bridge, but not river spaces. So this is just a little reminder there. Now how does the turn work? Well, obviously like we said, we're going to draw some cards, play some cards, and then check our hand size. So let's say we're at the start of the beginning of the game, draw 3 cards. Now when you draw cards, you have to draw from different decks. At the beginning of the game you draw 3 cards, so maybe I draw a donkey, a crocodile, and an eagle. So you always have to draw from different decks. Later in the game you'll only be drawing 2 cards. You have to draw 2 different cards. And then now you've started a hand, so maybe on the first turn I'll say, oh well, I will play the donkey. And then I'll do the donkey action, which I'll show you. Next turn, I'll draw 3 cards. Maybe I do an elephant, another crocodile, and another eagle. So now again, you only can play one type of card, but now I've amassed more eagles and more crocodiles. So maybe this turn I'm going to play all my crocodiles. So you're kind of slowly like grabbing cards to play on this turn and then building up your hand to play on the next turn or turns down the road. Again, always keeping in mind at the end of your turn the hand limit there at the bottom of the board. So when you play cards, how do they work? Well, they all work differently here. And one thing to notice about these, so I took some donkey cards here. These decks are always stacked in ascending order. So we start with the lowest number here at the start of the game, and you can see they're going to go up, up, and up, like so, and then all of the decks are like this. And so when you play cards, like on my turn I just said I played donkey cards, you're going to play that card, and it's then going to go under the bottom of the deck. So if later on, let's say I had played, you know, like 3 or 4 of these alligator cards, then these are going to go under the bottom of the deck. If you play a mix of cards, let's say I had in my hand like this, 2s and 3s, and I played them all. You can put them under the bottom of the deck in any order, as long as you have them going from ascending order like so at the bottom, like that. So how do each of these actually work? Well, let's first look at the donkey. The donkey is the simplest one. You're just going to move the number of spaces that you have played. So let's say we played the 2 donkey cards there. You're just going to add them up. They're going to be a total of 4. So you can move donkeys 4 spaces. Now you can see they only move through this kind of terrain. So they can't move through mountains. They can't move across bridges or in water at all. But when we say move, you're not actually ever moving your sloth per se. You're moving the animal that you played. So I can move the donkey 4 spaces. And we can see we've already got our leaf at this spot. We want to get up to here. So we got to move that donkey up there. Now, when you start your movement, as the donkey comes into contact or adjacency to your space, let's say it was here, like that. So you can say, oh, I've got 4 donkey movement. I would go 1. I can hop on for free if it's on the same space or adjacent, but I've used 1 donkey movement, 2, 3, 4, like so, and then he can drop me off either in the same space or an adjacent space. In this case, if he dropped me off there, then I would pick up my second leaf, and then I'd be good to go. Now, he can also move through that spot. So if he picked me up on this turn like so, let's say he was, I don't know, he was there, and then it would say I played my 4 movement, I could jump on there, 1, 2, 3, but he can't move across there, but he could drop me off there. So as you move through your leaves, you can pick them up, although there's a special rule that for the eagles, you can't pick those up just by flying over them. But that's a special weird rule for the eagles. Well, it's not weird. It makes sense. You're too high in the air. So that's what happens. Usually you play your cards like so, and then you move that particular animal around, any of those different tokens. So if I had, more than 1 donkey token there, theoretically, for some reason, if you wanted, you could move each of them separately. That's going to come into play more with like the ants, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you move them around and then they pick you up and drop you off for free. Once you get dropped off, then your turn's over, even if you still have more movement points to spend with that. But the rules for the other animals get a little bit more interesting. So the next we'll take a look at here is the elephant. And again, the elephant, you combine the total number of elephants that you play. So this is a total of 4, but then you subtract 1 from the total. So I played 4 minus 1, they get 3 movement. It's not minus 1 per card. But then they have an interesting thing here. They don't move through a lot of different terrain. You can see that, only water and the plains, but they can throw you 3 spaces. Now they can't throw you through a mountain space. That's a special rule with that. But that's what the elephant does. Pretty interesting. Now conversely here, you can see the alligator or the crocodile, they can move through these terrain spaces. You're going to total up the amount that you play and then add 1 to the total. But they can only move in spaces that are in the river or adjacent to the river, and they've also got to be this type. So you can see here's a crocodile's piece, and it can move anywhere it wants in the river or in the space next to the river. Even though the card here says it can move in the forest, this forest space is not adjacent to the river because they don't wander too far away. They're not a land-dwelling animal at all, although a little bit. They'll sunbathe. Then that's sort of dictating the rules there. But they move a little extra quick because, they swim fast and they're in the water, so they get that little bonus. Now next we'll talk about the unicorn, which is not a real animal. You can only play 1 unicorn card, so you cannot combine these, but you can see they start a little bit higher and they get really fast at the end there. So they can go up to 7 just by playing one card. And again, here's the terrain that they can move through. Very simple. Now we get to some real bonkers abilities. And first we'll talk about here the eagle. So the eagle is very interesting. You have to play at least 6 movement points worth. So if I played all 3 of these, then only then can you activate the eagle. Doesn't matter how much you play as long as it's 6 or more. And then you can pick up the eagle, put it wherever you want, so put it next to you, and then you can jump on and then you move 6 spaces. So it's very good for getting you out of a jam, and you know, it's good to have some of these kind of sitting in your hand to kind of pick the eagle up, come rescue you, and then move you 6 spaces maybe next to some other animals that you have some other cards in your hand for. And finally here we have the ants, and the ants are very interesting. There's actually 10 of these on the board like I said, and for each movement point of ants, let's say I played a whole mess of these, and let's say I had a bigger one in my hand here like that one. So maybe I had 9 points of ants there that I played. Now I can do 2 things with those movement points. Let's look at this deal here. So I've got 9 points of ant movements. I can go 1, 2, 3, like that. And then for a movement point 4, you can jump over a chain of ants. So you can set up like a really long chain to be able to get yourself in a good situation. So you can move pretty far, even though the ants can't really carry you per se. So that's a kind of interesting thing about the ants. Now that's just all of the animals in the basic sort of setup here. Now there's 6 other animals, and there's a nice little cheat sheet here. They give you most of the rules. They don't give you all the kind of the idiosyncrasies of the rules. But in the back here we can see some other ones. We've got a human, we've got some rabbits, giraffes, orangutans. These are cool. They can kind of like throw you back and forth to each other. Mountain goats, which are interesting. They'll move through the mountains really fast and for free. Dolphins that just move through the river, and so on. So kind of based on the animals that you have set up, as well as how your map kind of ends up, certain animals will be better or worse depending on, you know, kind of the game setup and how everything goes. But you keep playing until somebody gets their 8th leaf. You'll finish out the round, so everybody each equal number of turns. It is possible to get your 9th leaf because I've seen people get, you know, 2 leaves in 1 turn. So there is a way to kind of catch up if you set your hand up right. But you play all the way through. If more than one person has the equal number, 8 or 9 leaves at the end, then you're going to compare the total, just a flat number of movement points of any cards in your hand as a tiebreaker. And then the rules say if it's still a tie, you're too lazy to care because you're a sloth. So play again if you want. But that is the gist of the game. Okay, so that is Fast Sloths. So let's do my 3 pillars of review for it. It's going to be a little bit tricky on the first few. Now I've played this like 8 times now. I played it a lot. And I have not played it with 5 though. I played it 2, 3, and 4 a bunch. Haven't had a chance to play it with 5. Now my weekly game group, my Thursday night group, they have had a chance to play it with 5 and they all really enjoyed it. And I don't expect I would not enjoy it with 5. I think it would be great. In terms of like which player count do I like more, I think out of the 3 player counts I played, probably 4 players is the best, because you just kind of have so much kind of fun, chaos, and sort of backstabbing that can happen. Although I'll get to the backstabbing in a minute. I don't want to fixate too much on that, but that can kind of go either way. Now in terms of the play time, what's the box? The box says 60 minutes. Oh yeah, you can get this done in well under 60 minutes for sure. Once everybody kind of gets the hang of the movement and some of the little intricacies with the animals and stuff like that, then you're going to get this done well under 60 minutes. I think even with 5 players, once everybody's experienced at the game, you can certainly get it in about 30 to 45 minutes. And turns are very, very snappy. There's not a lot of downtime because once you kind of roll into a couple of turns, as you're grabbing cards, you're really planning your next turn or 2 down the road. So once you kind of get the hang of that, figuring out, okay, well, this animal's kind of close to me, so you know the donkey's right next to me. I'm going to grab that for now because I'm going to play it right this second. But then it's a good idea to grab the eagle, and then I'll grab an ant for later. And so that's a real interesting part of the game as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now the last thing is like, what is it like? Well, I don't know. I mean, the card drafting, sort of hand building, deck building part of it feels very deck building, but it's also very interesting because when you get the cards initially, they're slow. All the animals start off slow, but then everybody starts to uncover, faster and faster versions. Then it become really interesting. Like you don't want to reveal, you don't want to take the speed 3 eagle or whatever, and then reveal a speed 4 for your opponent to take, that kind of thing. But then as you kind of stuff the cards underneath as you're playing them, the animals are going to generally slow down, and that's a kind of nice like ebb and flow to the game. So the animals are really fast, and then you kind of hitched a ride, and then now they kind of settle down for the evening, and so they're kind of slowing down over some time. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic there, the kind of speeding up and slowing down and oscillating back and forth for each of the different animals. And then it's just really a race game. I mean, you're just racing around and trying to pick the best path. Typically, the strategy that I've seen is you basically start in a corner and then race around the board and forsake one of the other corners. So you have to sort of, choose your path through and just say, I'm going to ignore that one, probably. I mean, that seems to be like the most important opening strategy for your first player, too. So the race part of it is there. But really, it kind of feels like Ticket to Ride. In a way, it's like, I don't know, it's not like Ticket to Ride, but it kind of is, because you're kind of like snatching cards to put together, and then because those cards oscillate, their value kind of goes up and down, and so you're not like building routes and blocking, but you are like stealing animals from people too. So instead of like laying a track to block somebody's route, you're moving the donkeys all over here, so now there's like no animals next to them, or like, oh, I guess I have to use the ants now because I have some ants. I want to do something on my turn. They are near me. It wasn't as great as the turn I was going to use, my 8 points of donkeys for. But, so there is that same sort of like grabbing cards and then laying cards down in the right pattern. Where here you don't typically see like, grab cards, and then play. You're always playing cards. But sometimes you could get in a situation where you might just take cards and not play anything. And that's not always like the end of the world to end the game. I think you 99% of the time always want to play an animal on your turn and move. But I've seen a situation where somebody has actually chosen not to do that, and it's been to their benefit. But that was probably like in 1 or 2 games I've seen that out of the 8 that I've played. But again, everybody's still, relatively fresh with the game. But I think this is really a great game. Like, I'm just really blown away about how fun the game is, how everything kind of works together, the variability of the boards and the different animal mixtures, and just kind of the whole like puzzling out of like what's the best sort of plan that I can do, because there is some tactics to it. As animals get moved around in ways that you didn't anticipate, they get moved away from you, you've got to adjust to that. But you have a good plan to sort of stage out over the course of the game. Even that first spot that you put your sloth to begin your plan of attack, because you're like, oh, I'm going to put it here. There's donkeys next to me. Then there's ants. Then I can maybe grab the eagle. That'll get me over to the other side across the sort of wasteland of no animals. And then over there, there's a human there. They can run around the trail, and that's going to get me down here. So you really do find yourself sort of trying to plan out like a good chunk of your game at all moments, especially during the early game. So that's a real interesting thing. But then you have that cool kind of tactical aspect of like, oh shoot, they move the donkeys, but I've got these in my backup so I can do this and that. And I got to say, just everybody I played it with the Thursday night group, with the family. I played it a lot at BGG Con last year. Everybody that I played it with there really got a kick out of it, along with myself. And this is the next statement I was going to come out with. I don't like saying this, but I feel like this is how much I like the game, so I want to say it. I think this is Friedman Free's best game since Power Grid. I've liked other of his games. The Copycat game I liked enough. I liked Friday. I feel like I'm forgetting a game. There's a couple other games of his that I've really enjoyed. Fabled Fruits and stuff like that. Now, I've not liked every single one of his games, but to me, this one, I feel like I can keep playing this. Like even that basic setup, which I've played a couple of times now, I can still play it again, because I feel like, although it's getting, I think I probably played it 3 times or so, maybe 4 times. And then I feel though like maybe I'm just now wearing on it, but I've played it a few times, just that basic setup, to sort of, hone my skills at like what I should do with it. But the other part of it is when you don't play the basic setup and you just get the 2 boards together and then you take turns kind of putting those animals out, that becomes another cool kind of sort of drafting aspect of the game. And it doesn't take long. You just take turns putting animals out, and adds like another maybe 5 minutes to the game. Unless you get somebody that is just like, come on, put the animal out there. I have seen that as like, just put it down, put it next to you so you can use it and move on. Anyway, but yeah, so it's just the whole, like the way you can mix things together and everything, and the side of it that kind of like, it's a really good game. Like I'm like, this is a good game. But then the thing that like ticks it up into greatness is the meanness to it. Now you don't have to play it mean. Remember I said, you know, take it easy with the backstabbing comment before? You can play it kind of loosey-goosey. I played it with the family, not too mean. Just try to be playing efficient and optimal. But like on the Thursday night group, I mean, we have just gone at it. We played it 2-3 weeks ago now, and then it was basically towards the end of the game, it was just the knives were out, throats were being slit. You know, it was just like, oh, you're gonna win, so we're just gonna like, you know, destroy the animals, and they're just all gonna migrate from some flood or some famine in that area. They're not gonna, you know, you're just gonna have to like take a turn off there. You know, because you're now out of your eagles. You know, you didn't have an eagle to come pick you up, that kind of thing. Or maybe there's no eagles in the game, right? Because that's kind of your get out of jail free cards. That's just a big change. You just pull the eagle out, and then, you know, well, then your get out of jail free card's gone. But it was a riot. We were laughing, we were doing it to each other back and forth, and that really kind of added that extra layer of like, okay, now I've got to go in and expect that people are going to be playing ruthless. I mean, and it's great because it looks like a kid's game, and you can be played as a kid's game and as a family game, but then you can just turn the switch up and crank it up and then just play it completely ruthless and brutal. And even probably like right from the beginning, you could just be, you know, in our games, it's kind of been a tendency to kind of do it late game to just sort of, you know, kneecap somebody. But I could see it really, even like in a 2 and a 3 player game, as we get more and more plays under our belt, we could get more and more vicious with it. So to me, that shows a lot of potential in terms of how to play the game. Now, granted, I think that is going to put some people off, but I think you don't really have to do that. And it's not always optimal to just play like a jerk in this game. But I think a lot like Ticket to Ride, you could have many styles of play at work here in this particular game. So to me, that's great and fascinating. And there's extra boards. There's now 13 animals because there's some promo animal in the BGG store, so they could easily come out with more animals and more boards and things like that. But I don't know that it really needs any more. I would definitely get the expansion map pack, just because I don't know how much it is. I think it's like $20 or less, $15. But to me, it's, if you get the game and like it, it's a no-brainer to pick up those extra boards just to give you, the variability. It's going to really help you, extend the life of the game for sure. But it's not mandatory. Anyway, definitely high recommend. This really surprised me, and I don't know. I don't think everybody's going to like it, but I think most people will really like this. So definitely check it out. Thanks.